Howdy folks, Shell Presto here. Today's video is going to cover two topics. Firstly, on the purely art side, this is my first time using Arteza brush pens on film, so I'm going to give my thoughts on them. Secondly, this video is part of my ongoing public domain redesign series. Well, sort of. This character is an original creation, but she's so intertwined with Airboy and Valkyrie, who are superheroes from 1940s comics that are in the public domain, that I thought she'd be a good addition to this series. So I'm just coloring this piece and painting a background for this installment. I actually penciled and inked this piece months ago, and I really surprised myself because, aside from a couple of stray lines, I think this really emulates the clean comic book look that I love. It's not as good as something by John Byrne and Terry Austin, but I'd like to think it has that feel. I was a bit sad to color it, even though I'm happy with how it turned out, just because I think it looked great in black and white too. So, about the coloring process. You can see I'm using Arteza real brush pens. They call them brush pens, but they feel more like markers with a real brush tip. I'll explain, and I'm sure you can see if you look at the footage, but the tips have a real brush with synthetic bristles, like a paintbrush. The barrels are thinner like a pen, perfectly round, and feel very good in the hand. The ink flow feels like a marker. It doesn't come rushing out or anything, but you can get a good amount of coverage per stroke, and there are so many colors that I'd be more inclined to put these in the same class as markers. However, these are not merely markers. They are meant to be used and blended with water. So ideally, you would use these with a paintbrush and a cup of water handy, or a water brush. I did not use, nor will I give my opinion on the water brush that came with this set, because I really prefer the feel and control of a traditional paintbrush. And I didn't want my thoughts about a water brush to taint my experience with the brush pens themselves. This was my third drawing session sitting down with these pens, and I have to say that I'm pretty thrilled with them. I own the 48 color set, which I got off of Amazon back on Prime Day for, I believe, $26. They're currently listed at $40 with an $8 coupon checkbox right below the price. So if that's available to everyone, then that would drop it down to $32 for 48 brush pens. This 48 set has a good selection of colors, all very vivid. If I have a complaint about this set, it's that there are very few muted colors, and while blending is good, I don't know that the complementary colors, say orange and purple, are formulated to offset and mute each other well. You'll see as I'm coloring Battleaxe's skin, if I was using Copic markers or regular watercolors, I'd usually use a light purple to shade the skin. Using the lightest purple in this set with the only light skin tone created a gray, muddied tone. There seemed to be no winner between the purple and peach. So I had to grab a warm tan and work with that to shade the skin, but still play with the purple to get some cool tones in the shadows. It really was a little harrowing. I was also a little disappointed in the lack of gray variety. There's no warm versus cool here. There's two light cool grays and two darker, more neutral grays. But if you like warm grays, you're out of luck. And they don't exist in the larger set either. Speaking of skin tones, I do have to say that the pinks blend out wonderfully into the skin tones on this piece. This was actually a lot easier than when using alcohol-based markers, in my opinion. All that said, I do regret not getting the 96 color set. $69 is definitely an investment I couldn't make without trying a more affordable set first, but now that I'm pleased with this set, I wish I knew what other colors are available. It's also worth noting that there are no refills or ways to buy the pens individually. So if a color you like is only in the 96 color set and it runs out, well, you've got to go without it or drop $69 again. I contacted Arteza back in September, I believe, and they got back to me within a few days, which was great. Anyway, I asked them just to be sure that there was no way to buy the pens individually, and they said, and this is paraphrasing, that there currently is no way to buy individual markers and that they were working on it, but had no definitive plans or dates to roll that out. But those are minor complaints. Besides a good shadow option for the peach skin tone, and I do recommend the tan over the purple, I was quite pleased with the color selection, especially if you like bright colors. I'm using the classic superhero primaries for this piece, yellow, red, and blue, and I think they turned out fantastic. These colors blend very, very nicely, both using a light marker on a dark color to make bold gradients, or using water on any color to make softer, lighter gradients. Using water with these markers, as you're supposed to, works exceptionally well with mid and light tones. You can instantly get a soft, watercolor feel. The reaction between dark colors and water feels a little violent, though. It's not hard to control, but the water dilutes many of the dark colors so quickly and thoroughly that you immediately have to go over the wet area with some more dark color to get your boldness back. You'll see I lay 3 tones into many areas, like the light red-orange, red, and dark red of the vest. Blend them together with water, and then, while still wet, go back in with the pens directly to blend out the gradient and get my darks back. I do that with the darkest blue in the jeans and black and navy in the sky as well, immediately taking the marker to the freshly wet areas. As a matter of fact, sometimes the water felt unnecessary. I used water on every part of this piece because after I started using water in the beginning, I had to use it throughout the rest of the piece to get that watercolor painterly look across the whole piece. But I'm very curious, and we'll do a follow-up video on using these markers without water at all, just to see what happens and if the ink flow is good enough to cover it. As far as the brush tips go, they feel really nice and smooth. They are super fine at the tip, which takes some getting used to. They're thinner than I'd prefer, but that's way better than being too thick. You need a light touch making fine lines, but you can, and that is a boon over other markers. I've never had a marker with a tip this fine. I was able to get into the tips of her finest curls and color her lips with these pens, which I just don't do with markers, and you know, when you're watercoloring you have to switch to the finest brush. I still grabbed a colored pencil to smooth out the edges of the lips, but I wasn't afraid to use the markers on the lips the way I am with Prismacolors or Copics. So okay, let's take a little break from the review to talk about this character design. I'm drawing Caprice Nelson Hightower, aka Battleaxe, from the Challenger Foundation, a team of superheroes in my and my husband's Ascension Epoch book series. While she isn't a classic superhero from the 40s who has fallen into the public domain, she's so closely linked to 2 of them that I thought it would pique the curiosity of this series' regular viewers. Battleaxe is the granddaughter of Airmaster, who you classic hero fans may know better as Airboy, and his foe-turned-flame, Valkyrie. Airboy was one of dozens of heroes created in the 40s to beat up Nazis and get Americans feeling patriotic about World War II. He appeared in Airfighters comics and his own title, Airboy. I'm not going to go into a huge spiel about it because I will surely do a video entirely on Airboy in the future. Let's leave it at he was an awesome pilot who put together his own unique plane. We tweaked his former Nazi lover Valkyrie's backstory so that she's descended from the god of war, Mars, which gave her superpowers. And 2 generations later, we get Battleaxe. I particularly included Battleaxe in this series because I relied so much on Airboy's costume for her design. Since there's a history of more than 100 years in our Ascension Epoch books, we have a lot of characters who are the children or relatives of other adventurers, many of them from the public domain. Some, like Battleaxe, are proud of their heroic roots, and some try to downplay it, ignore it, or make a name for themselves removed from the works of their ancestors. Battleaxe's mother, Charlize Nelson, was a debauched alcoholic and drug addict who would disappear for months at a time. Her father, English Super Commander and Action XP star Gerald Gentleman Jerry Hightower, refused to even acknowledge his paternity until Caprice's late teens. Thus, Caprice was raised primarily by her grandparents. Being raised by superheroes, Battleaxe was all sorts of ready to take up that mantle. Airboy's costume is one of my favorites among the 40s superhero crowd. Not my absolute favorite, that's Hydro Man, but a favorite nonetheless. He's got the pilot goggles, the kerchief, which I actually want to add to Battleaxe's costume next time, and the awesome red and yellow leather jacket with the V for victory or V looking like wings, however you want to interpret it, but it's got it. It just looks cool. Battleaxe is a whopping but well-sculpted 500 pounds and 6.5 feet tall. She's a superhero, but on a day-to-day basis she's better known to the public from her Action XP roles, in which she insists on doing all of her own stunts, and swimsuit modeling. Not that being a member of the Challenger Foundation is a low-profile job. She was a popular figure in professional wrestling for a while, but she was also a serious athlete who medaled in the Olympics. To walk that line between model and two-fisted adventurer, I wanted her to look at once beautiful and ready to give a beating. Also, quite a few members of the Challenger Foundation have a bit of a futuristic look to their costumes, so I wanted some sci-fi elements in there too. Her metal headband houses her communicators, which I imagine makes getting your ears boxed in a fight a little less jarring and painful. Her bones and muscles are considerably denser than a normal human's, so opponents have broken their hands and legs punching and kicking her. She doesn't necessarily need any armor, but I thought a touch of metal on her wrists and chest were a nice touch. And you can see the brush pens did allow me to get that nice silvery look and convey that well. Besides the cuffs, her jeans, boots, and gloves are from Airboy verbatim. And I wanted to incorporate that awesome jacket, but made it a vest so that she could show off her lady abs. Because she's so big and super strength is such an important part of her character, I wanted her, look-wise, to be comparable to other female bruisers of old like She-Hulk and Big Barda. I wanted you to see her muscles. So the vest certainly allows for that. I went with good old-fashioned victory rolls in her hair to really gel the sci-fi and rockabilly elements. And, well, I'm pretty proud of it. For a background, I wanted it to feel cinematic, since she's an actress, like a scene in an action movie, so I put a window and cityscape behind her. This was inspired by Die Hard, by the way. I really used the ability to get watercolor effects from the pens here, laying down colors, going over them with water, blurring them out so they're more suggestive of a city than looking like a fully rendered city. And I used multiple blues and blacks in the sky. The gradient and blending turned out great, I think. I was super pleased. Now, Arteza brush pens are very transparent, like watercolors. So to add the lights and stars, I did use gouache and gel pens. These were from other brands because I only bought Arteza brush pens. I don't own anything else from them. As I said before, I want to do a follow-up to this Arteza review where I try these pens without using any water at all and see how that goes. I think the colors would be even more vivid, but I wonder if the ink flow would be enough to do an entire piece that way. So, here's where I say, subscribe if you want to catch an Arteza follow-up video where I try these markers without water and give my thoughts. I do have to say that this set does not feel very portable, at least not in the case it came in. The pens come in a box with 4 plastic trays, and I find navigating the trays to be a headache. The color on the caps is remarkably close to the actual colors of the pens, which is thrilling. That just doesn't happen with markers or paints, not even the expensive brands. Because that is so, I think these pens would best be kept inside a box with no trays on their side, with the colored back tips exposed so you can easily see and reach for the colors. Or perhaps a large pencil pouch with the zipper on the circular end cap instead of a horizontal line down the center. Ohuhu markers come in a pouch like that, and I think Arteza should consider it so long as it's not a flimsy pouch. Now, the ads I've seen for Arteza brush pens on YouTube claim they're light fast, and that may be true in that everything has an element of light fastness. Like, even if the light fastness of paint is 1 out of a possible 100, that lousy 1 is still light fast. It's just not very good. They may be light fast like that, but I can't find any actual documentation on their light fastness, and they don't have an official rating. Most markers are not light fast, so I would imagine that these aren't any better than alcohol or water-based markers, which mean they aren't suited for something you'd want to put in a frame on a wall or hang in a museum. They'd probably fade over time, especially if you didn't get UV-coated glass. But if you're drawing to scan your work and display it digitally or to make prints, well, I love the results on these. Alright, just so you know, when you see the final image, I did adjust Battleaxe's eyes on the computer a bit. I didn't notice it much in the ink stage, but once I colored her, I realized one of the eyes was a bit low, which can happen when you're drawing small and trying to mash details into a face. Battleaxe will appear in future Challenger Confidential books. The first book, Copperknights and Granite Men, is available through Amazon.com and other online booksellers. And of course, purchasing a book helps out the channel. Okay, so hopefully you folks didn't mind the mashed up video topics. I always talk about my design thoughts or artist process in the public domain redesign videos, and it just so happened that I was using these brush pens on camera for the first time, and they're new to me, so it seemed like the place to talk about it. And, like I said, I didn't want to talk too much about Airboy, because I'll probably do a video on him entirely in the future. Hopefully you found both topics interesting, or at least one of them, and you'll consider giving this video a thumbs up. If you want to see more art supply reviews from me, please consider subscribing. I'll have a Prima watercolor review coming up in the near future that won't be part of the public domain redesign series. If you want to see more public domain redesigns from me, consider subscribing, and know there are already videos in this series on my channel. And if you don't know what it means for a character to fall into the public domain, please check out the first video in this series. And, as always, if you have any questions or comments about this video, the characters, my techniques, or the art supplies, please leave a comment. Most importantly, have an awesome day. Presto, over and out. You stuck around. You're getting used to this. Usually, I only cover one character in these public domain redesign videos, but I feel a little bad for burdening fans of this series with an art supply review. So let's look at some other 40s heroes I've given the Presto makeover to. This first one was actually done with the Arteza brush markers again. It's a redesign of Daredevil. No, not Marvel's Daredevil. There was a Daredevil before him created by Jack, is it Binder or Binder? And Don Rico in 1940. I'm not going to talk about my changes here because I'll draw him again like this in the future. But I didn't record this drawing, and I did use the Arteza brush pens on it, so here it is. I really like the vibrant colors here, and I am really enjoying these pens. I'll also show you this, which is obviously uncolored, but is of my favorite 40s superhero, Hydro Man. He was created by Bill Everett. That's the guy who created Namor the Submariner, who is not in the public domain. I'll eventually do a video on Hydro Man too, of course, but it won't be much of a redesign, because this guy's costume is 99% perfect. But it'll be a fun video when I get around to it anyway, because we can talk about what makes him an interesting hero, and the many plans I have for him. I'll even be inflammatory and go so far as to say that I like him better than Batman. And if a bunch of you fine folks ask me to prioritize a Hydro Man video and get it out sooner rather than later in the comments, I guarantee I will deliver, because I don't need much prodding to draw Bob Blake. Alright, I'll leave you off there. You folks have an awesome day. Presto, over and out.